You have Patrick Findaro here, co-founder at Vetted Biz. Excited to have on Jay Pittroff. He's a franchisee of CertaPro Painters in Roswell, Georgia. Jay, thanks so much for joining us today.
I'm happy to be here, Patrick. Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit how you left your pretty successful career in finance and decided to buy an existing CertaPro's painters. I'd love to hear a little bit about how that process went down.
Happy to share that. To me, it's a pretty cool story. I always thought I wanted to own my own business. I read books on, different ideas, and I never really can come up with one myself. I'm not much of an ingenious guy, but I did have an entrepreneurial spirit most of my life. Decided to part ways with a financial institution after being in that industry for several years. Decided to look into franchising. What was interesting to me was I didn't need to come up with some bright idea to start a business or own a business. I could take somebody else's idea, take their model and their processes and their methodologies, and I'm really good at kind of just moving things along and process and structure and stuff like that. So being provided with a playbook was really interesting to me. And then I became aware that 80% of franchising is actually not food service, it's other things. So I started diving in a little bit deeper. I grew up in a condo community. I probably didn't even know how to change a light bulb until I was in my 20s, embarrassingly enough. I was a golfer growing up and so forth. So, when I told my friends and family I was interested maybe in buying a painting business, they looked at me like I had three eyes and But I figured I knew customer service and project management and had an MBA in finance and a lot of skills that I developed in corporate that were very transferable. And really all I needed to learn was the trade. So far it's worked out pretty well.
Awesome. And then did you work with an advisor or how did you come across CertaPro?
Yeah, I was approached. I was doing a lot of networking, trying to, exploring my options and trying to see what was out there. And was in a breakout session from a larger networking group, an offshoot. And in that breakout session, it was a series on entrepreneurship and owning your own business. Little did I know, it turned out it was a franchise broker that was running the meeting. And he started talking about franchising, and that's when it piqued my interest, and I started to learn more about it. And then I ended up working with that franchise broker after interviewing a few other folks around town that were kind of in the same business. I ended up going with them.
And did you just quit your job at the financial institution and dedicate, all your time to finding the right franchise, or did you keep your job and kind of do the process in parallel?
We parted ways. I decided it wasn't a fit for me, and they decided it wasn't a fit for them, and so it was kind of a mutual understanding. There was a shift in management, and so kind of how corporate America goes sometimes.
And then I understand you bought an existing franchise back in 2017. Did you look at opening up a new territory in the greater Atlanta area, or why did you decide to buy that existing site?
Well, CertaPro is the largest painting company in North America, so new territories are pretty hard to come by over the past few years. Not that there haven't been one here and there open up, right, where they've decided they wanted to expand out from a large city like Atlanta. I was presented with a resale opportunity in the Roswell, Georgia area, which is just north of Atlanta, along with a number of other franchise opportunities that I was considering and talking through with this franchise broker that I was working with. One was a commercial cleaning company. Another one was a commercial residential locksmith company. There was an accounting service that I was considering buying, a pizza plant, all these different opportunities. So within the realm of CertaPro and painting, it was really just me considering this resale as an opportunity for me. It turns out that one of the main determining factors for me on the pro side of the pros and cons list was the fact that the residential painting territory was within the turf. I lived within the turf, right? So the way they do the franchising in a business like this, it's by zip code. And so I live in one of the zip codes that I service, which it was kind of like the stars are aligned. I should probably think about that.
Yeah, and like referrals and everything. It's like the consumer. You're gonna have friends that can give you referrals. It's
I get so mad when I see a neighbor with somebody else painting their house. I just want to go up to their door.
Dude,
what are you doing? You didn't even talk to me.
I imagine a new CertaPro, I haven't looked at the latest FDD. I don't have it on hand right here, but I imagine it's like 100, 150K to get in. For a resale, like are people paying 3-4 times the owner's earnings, or what's kind of standard if you want to buy an existing CertaPro painters? Because imagine you have to pay a nice premium.
There are many variables, as you can imagine, that get factored into that. So it's been almost 6 years since I bought my business. I think the thinking has shifted slightly, but I do believe it's still within the realm of 3 to 3.5 times EBITDA for the past couple of years. Another way of evaluating a business like this is in looking at the revenue and taking 50% of the average of the past 2-3 years in revenue. So there are different ways to skin the cat. But as you can imagine, things like goodwill in the community, brand awareness, stuff like that matters. The reason you're paying, maybe 3 or 4 times what you might for a sole proprietorship is because you're buying what you would imagine is a brand name with a methodology and a process and everything else. So it should be a little bit easier to get it going and make money doing it versus, the hamburger stand on the street corner type thing.
And when you bought the CertaPro in Roswell, Georgia, what was like the employee structure like? What were you getting into?
Yeah, so I inherited a small team of an office manager and a residential sales associate. Fairly small in terms of the employees. And then, let me think, it was probably 3 to 4 painting crews that were also part of that team.
And I know CertaPro has different models, probably varies state by state, but for your structure, was it mostly 1099 contractors or mostly W-2 actual employees?
Yeah, so we're fortunate in Georgia because we don't have a whole lot of restrictions around whether the worker needs to be an employee or a sub. We have both. It's a very seasonal business, so this time of year is a lot slower in terms of the lead flow and the market demand, especially for residential painting, than in the spring and the summer, when we're past the holidays and past the winter season and the sun comes out and flowers are starting to grow and people start thinking about painting their house. The phone starts ringing off the hook in March and April, if you will. And so it does require some level of flexibility and being able to ebb and flow based on the demand. That's the reason that I feel fortunate that, we're still, as of today, able to have 1099 workers in the company. But we typically have both. And some people would prefer to have an employee come paint their house.
Yeah. And I guess, with all the government like incentives like PPP and different loans, there have actually been some pretty nice benefits to having employees versus subcontractors in terms of benefits to the owner.
Yeah, no doubt. And so COVID was not the worst thing in the world for our business in terms of the growth. And it sounds egregious to put it that way. And I'm trying different ways of phrasing that.
It'd be worse if you were saying that like June 2020 or like end of 2020, but it's 2023.
It was a tragedy and tragic. And I had family members affected, but in terms of just the business and our intentions for growth, et cetera, we grew exponentially during a couple of years of COVID. And I was able to get some PPP money to help fuel that growth and invest further in the business.
What would you say the growth's been, if you don't mind sharing, like since you first acquired the business almost 6 years ago, back in 2017?
Yeah, so we grew within the first 4 years, we grew 3 times over. Yeah, so when I bought the business, you had asked me about personnel earlier. I had an office manager and a sales associate. I now have an office manager, 2 production managers, along with a commercial project manager, a residential sales associate, and I'm hired a commercial sales associate. My plans are to grow the company another 3 times over the course of the next 4 years, and put another management layer in place and so forth. So it's been a lot of fun, and we're not done growing by any stretch of the imagination.
That's awesome. And what are some ways like CertaPro franchisees or the franchisor at corporate has helped you, 3x your growth, which is super impressive in just 6 years?
Yeah. One of the cool things about being part of a franchise is, especially a large operation like this one, there are 300 if I'm guessing now because it's changing all the time, they're always adding franchisees, but there are about 380 to 390 CertaPro franchisees in North America. I like to think that I'm friends with almost all And so just imagine the support network that comes with having that many friends that are basically looking to grow and create wealth and help people the same way that I am for the most part. So we can commiserate with each other over a beer at the bar or over lunch. We can celebrate our successes with each other. And we can learn from each other. It's really cool. We just got back from our annual conference in California last week, actually. It was in Southern California. And just great to be able, as opposed to being on your own. And then as far as the corporate support is concerned, one of the things that you got to determine before you buy a franchise is, or start one, is assessing the return on the investment of your royalty. Because you are taking a cut.
What are you getting back?
Right. You're taking a cut of what you make every dollar. You're giving so many pennies to the franchisor. It is a worth. And CertaPro has exceeded my expectations. I'll say that in terms of the return on the investment for my royalty. They really had their act together. It's a great company, amazing culture with really strong values. The technology is top notch. That's available to me in terms of putting estimates together. Their training programs are phenomenal, well thought out, always evolving. Lots of in-person training, lots of online training, and the people are phenomenal. So it's been really good.
And I imagine there's a lot of synergies with like the parent company, First Service, where they have another 4 or 5 like Class A franchise brands that I'm sure they're sharing best practices, operational, marketing, et cetera.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. In fact, I was just at the Roswell Rotary meeting last week. It's a network of folks that get together every week and have front shake hand, and there's a speaker, and then they do lots of things in the community. Anyway, came upon and met a new franchisee of Floor Coverage International, which is actually,
I'm familiar with the brand.
Phenomenal brand. He just bought about a year ago, and so we're going to go have coffee. But those connections are invaluable. I feel pretty fortunate in that respect with regard to First Service brands, because the opportunities are almost limitless in terms of being able to branch out, network and give and get.
Have you ever thought about like taking on another franchise or kind of a side business in like the quiet months? Like I've spoken to some franchisees that have seasonal businesses that will have like a Christmas lighting business over, a 60, 90-day period. Have you given that much thought?
Not really. I mean, my brain's always working, but it's usually within the confines of what I'm doing right now. I anticipate over the next few years that I'll start to branch out and seek other opportunities to do other things and generate, income for myself and my family. Really, to be honest with you, to this point, we've done so much growing and we have so much more growing to do. Opportunities are just, me and the team are always brainstorming on new ideas and stuff like that. So it definitely keeps me occupied.
That makes sense. I mean, I think given your situation and what you've said, like you've 3X with one solution, you see the light to 3X with the same solution. So you could like spread yourself thin trying to sell other things and not hit that, where it sounds like you have a really defined roadmap and you just have to execute now in the next few years.
Yeah, on that, we do the EOS model, traction, if folks have heard of that. And so we
did that, and then we switched to scaling up with Vern Harnish. But I learned a ton about from EOS.
Yeah, it's been good. And we're just a year into it. But like I said, down the road, a few years, get a general manager in place, have the business be more like it resembles a passive income. For me, definitely would potentially look to writing a book or, starting another business or, doing some consulting, things like that. And so those are the types of opportunities that open up to you when you're able to have some success doing something like what I'm doing now. Right.
And I think sadly, a lot of franchisors and folks in the media sell prospective franchisees that you can have that like right away, and you can have a semi-absentee business model and make a ton of money without putting in the work.
Yeah, that's I guess part of what I was alluding to earlier. I see people buying fringe that I was thinking they're going to be able to replace their high-end income doing this and have a lot more fun doing it. And my philosophy, I think, aligns better with what reality is. And that it goes something like this. In my corporate life, I was betting not just on myself. Actually, I was betting much more on the company and the higher ups, et cetera. And in this, I'm betting on myself. And if you've got self-confidence and belief in yourself and your ability to make things happen and make customers happy and grow a business, this is a much safer and better bet than putting my money even in the market. And so if you look at it as an equity play or an investment, in other words, and that at the end of my investment period, just like a stock, when I cashed out, it's worth more than the market or other places I might have been able to put that money. That's probably a better way to look at it. Your first few years in this, even when you buy an existing company like what I did, they're hard. It's fairly grueling. You got to put in the work. People ask me if I would do it over again. I can't, and I refuse to answer that question because I'm not done.
Yeah.
So I'll answer that question once.
Ask in 10 years while you're writing the book, and like, why the options have like opened up even more.
Exactly. Yeah.
And was it like, how was like the decision making at home, like where you had, you could have easily got another job at a top bank in Atlanta, given your profile, and like, and I imagine that was like kind of might have been a tough conversation, or just like a lot to kind of think over, going into entrepreneurship later on. Yeah,
I think I agree with you. I probably could have easily gotten another job if I wanted. And truth be told, I was looking for another job. I took some time off, went and played some golf and did some different things with my family and stuff like that. And then when I put the suit and tie back on and I went back out and I started interviewing for jobs, it was the first time in my life I ever interviewed for a job and wasn't given an offer. So I started to reflect on that, and it became clear to me that this wasn't the same as it used to be. So I've got work in here now. More importantly, they're probably picking up on the fact that I'm not really that excited about going to work for their company again and doing energy you give off in my life. Yeah. And it's hard to hide that. And so that's when I started getting creative and thinking more creatively about what the next phase of my career might be.
What would you say has been like the biggest surprise over these last like 5-6 years of being a business owner?
I'm having way more fun than I ever anticipated. I was expecting and anticipating success, probably even at a level higher than what we've achieved, believe it or not. But I'm having more fun than I was expecting. The other surprise on the less positive, enthusiastic side would be the behaviors are much different in the blue collar world than they are in the white collar world. Getting used to that was something that it was a challenge for me, becoming aware, startlingly aware of some of the behaviors, wrapping my arms and my head around that, and then understanding, getting to the bottom of how to work through problems and situations and deal with what really is a different and a culture set, et cetera.
I think, a lot of people can resonate with that have, worked in the blue collar space, whether as like workers or business owners, where you really have to take care, what I've seen, really take care of your workers above and beyond. And you might have a worker that's not able to make rent 1 week or 1 month, or family issues, whatever, financing or just emotional support, where in my experience working at JP Morgan, you don't have that type of issue, but it's like, at least what I've seen, going above and beyond for your employees, and they really need that. And with that, you gain incredible loyalty.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just money. We do that. I pay my painters very well in relation to my competition. But we do a lot of things. We have events. We had a Christmas party at a taqueria down the street. And I mean, there was all kinds of food and drink, and they brought their kids and their wives and husbands. And it was just a blast to really, creating a family atmosphere like that. We have summer gatherings at the office, and we get bounce houses for the kids. And so every month they come in for a production meeting, and we give out awards. We have a painter of the month. So I could keep going on and on about what I'm very proud of, which is a culture in what we call in the CertaPro circles, creating a workplace of choice for the painters. Patrick, to your point, I couldn't support what you said enough. It's extremely important. I don't have a business without them. I look at myself to some extent as a marketing company, and I'm marketing and selling those guys and gals. So finding them and keeping them is of the utmost importance if you're going to have any kind of success in this kind of a trades business.
Yeah, I love how you said it so succinctly. And I think a lot of people are looking to get into franchising, really, especially if you haven't managed many employees.
Yeah.
Because you could have been in finance, tech, or whatever field selling medical devices. And
right.
Now you're going to be managing a few direct reports. And hopefully as you grow, scaling up. And unless you're all in and really having a high degree of empathy, I think it's tough. It's going to be hard to make it work.
Exactly. Yeah, it is hard to make it work. I mean, I had a $300 million P&L at SunTrust. And this is, on paper, it's peanuts, and it's a simple business model. At SunTrust, I had 40 vendors. Here, I've got, 5 or 6, and the ins and outs go something like this. You do a paint job, you get a check. My expenses are pay the painter, buy the paint. So it's incredibly straightforward as it relates to the business and the operation of the business. But what we can't minimize even for a second is how important it is to create a culture and an atmosphere where people want to be here. I have painters coming. We do our handoffs for the jobs the upcoming week every Friday morning from 7:30 to 8:30. They would come in here and we're available for that entire hour. And we review their jobs with them and ask them if they have any questions, et cetera. They come in every week for that. Some painters that know they're not even getting a job still come in on Friday morning because they want to see us. So how beautiful is that? I mean, it's pretty cool. But it took us years. I mean, 3-4 years to start turning the corner. I'm guessing I had 50 to 75 crews come and go in my 6 years here. The 13 crews I have working here now have all been with the company for over a year. It takes time.
Impressive.
Yeah.
And when you bought the business, was it like a struggling business, or was it at least some cash flow?
Was there a struggling business from a financial perspective? So the gentleman I bought it from, the company was making money, but it was still in the early stages. So it had been started as an e-tour for about 6 years before I bought it. So, but they were turning a profit.
And then you, as the new owner, came in, really defined the culture, brought up retention and 3X, and now there seems like a nice trajectory to grow further.
Yeah. The way you just described it, Patrick, it sounds like we kind of hit we jumped over the part where I made a bunch of mistakes, lost a bunch of money.
Well, I would love if you could enlighten us, like, what would you have done differently? I know it's easy sometimes being a Monday morning quarterback, but.
Well, there's something to be said for learning on the job. We've got to do a lot of there's a phrase, making payments to stupid university. I made several tuition payments to that college, but I like to think that I didn't make the same egregious mistake twice. So when it's in a pocketbook, when I tell prospective franchisees, CertaPro corporate will send folks that they're talking to about buying a franchise to me sometimes just to get another perspective from an existing franchisee on what kind of decision they're getting ready to make. And I'll tell them, what you want to make sure you've got enough initial and working capital for the first year and a half, so that you're able to sleep at night and not worry so much about making payroll, et cetera. And you can invest in the business the way you need to in order to grow and stabilize, et cetera.
That's something that comes up a lot, like with the franchisees I've interviewed, where it's like, get your finances in order before opening or acquiring the franchise, because it's going to be a lot easier doing it beforehand. Because when you really need it, you're probably not in the best financial situation the last couple of months. And it's either going to be crazy rates with non-traditional lenders, or you're just not going to get the financing you need.
Banks don't want to talk to you when you're in the financial situation I was. I still had a decent sized mortgage from, my banking job, 2 kids that I was preparing to send to college, and car payments and all of that stuff. So it's kind of an interesting dichotomy. So it's good advice to secure access to liquid funds before you decide to pull the trigger on a decision like this. Like I said, it doesn't need to be cash on hand or your account, but just the ability to, within 24 hours, to be able to get your hands on cash if you need it in the case of an emergency, or just unexpected expenses. Like I said, making mistakes and, It's hard to plan for that first year and a half. But you can hedge your bets and create a contingency plan by way of making sure you have enough access to capital to get through those first number of months. So that you can focus on what you need to focus on, just grow your team and your culture and building the business and so forth, and making it profitable, hitting that break even so that it's not as much of a concern kind of in the later periods.
And when you finance the initial purchase, was it like a SBA loan, cash savings, 401k rollover?
I did the 401k rollover. I did not initially secure any additional credit. In fact, I didn't use all of my retirement funds to purchase the business, but I did set up an account with the funds that I left behind to be able to access those funds via ACH next day in case I needed it. And there were times when I needed it.
I like that. And I think the 401k rollover, if you choose the right franchise and like you assess the risk like you did, where it's like the return is going to be a lot higher than the market. I know CertaPro, low failure rate, et cetera, like it can make a lot of sense. But if you choose the wrong franchise that's not a CertaPro and doesn't have as high of a success rate, you're putting all your eggs in a basket that is actually pretty risky.
Yeah, I hate to think of what that would look like for me. But I felt pretty confident going in, and I'm got very supportive.
You did your due diligence.
I feel like I did, but it helps to have a supportive spouse too. My wife I brought her through the process. We did the interviews, a lot of the interviews together. Made sure she was comfortable before I pulled the trigger. Wanted to make sure she was bought in with my decision, and she has been ever since. But yeah, no, I've heard those stories you're talking about.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of family issues, especially when the business isn't going as well, and where the spouse wasn't all in and wasn't informed during that initial decision, and it can cause a lot of strife. And I think everyone that's looking to invest in a franchise, definitely involve your spouse, or at least open the door to involve as much as possible and be transparent.
Yeah. I don't know if I should share this or not, but I'll go ahead and do it. I think I was in that year and a half, and I was on that, the curve, right? I think I was in crisis of engagement on the curve that, the ups and downs of a new engagement. And I came home that evening and I said to my wife, Colleen, I said, I'm starting to rethink this decision. Again, this is a year and a half in, and I thought she was going to punch me in the face. And got a very short, crisp lecture that has set me on the right path again. But that's the kind of support structure I'm talking about. I needed that. And I'm glad she gave me a little bit of a tongue lashing, because like I said, I'm having a blast now. It just, you gotta get through that first period.
It's interesting to hear that first period, in your experience, whether it's existing business that you're taking over or a new, there's pros and cons to both. Like existing, what we've seen is usually the first year, the revenue actually drops a bit, 10 to 20% change of business ownership, and then starts hopefully getting back up. But, you're not walking into something that's going to be on autopilot. You're rolling up your sleeves and have to basically create or transmit the culture you want with your employees and your organization.
Yeah. We stayed flat the first year, and then we started to grow the second year. There is something, when I looked at the business that I was preparing to buy, the CertaPro of Roswell, some people might have seen the low survey scores and some of the issues with respect to how the business was being run as negatives that may have deterred them from pulling the trigger. I looked at them as positives, and I saw a number of things in the business, bringing my experience in. I could change fairly quickly to make the business more successful and more profitable. The other thing I was thinking about, I got to know the prior owner fairly well, as you can imagine, over the course of a few weeks. And I thought I was pretty confident my attitude was going to make a difference. I guess the last thing I'll say on that is if you can, in the trades, when was the last time you hired a contractor to do something and they showed up late? So if I could show up on time, speak well, sound somewhat intelligent, dress okay, a decent haircut, and then deliver on what I promise, those people are going to call us back. And so more than anything else, the reason that we've been able to grow exponentially is because of that, because we take care of
show up and do the job.
We mess up, but we always make it right. That's my commitment, to our customers. And And the team that I've been lucky enough to surround myself with exudes that. And we all operate basically with that kind of a mindset.
So do you have any like customer guarantee, like 100% guarantee, or just that if there's an issue with the paint job, you're going to redo it?
So there's actually a written warranty. It's a legal warranty. If you read through it, you'll realize it was written by lawyers. And so there's some catches in there. We don't cover decks, for example, right? So if we stain a deck and a week later it's peeling, I'm not obligated to go back out and stain the deck. Well, I don't feel good about that. So if I get a call like that, I go stain the deck. I go take care of the deck, right? So I've got a different mentality that doesn't necessarily align 100% with the legal warranty that we put forward. But there is a 2-year warranty on any peeling or chipping paint or anything like that associated with pour prep work.
So you go above and beyond, and I'm sure, short term, there's fiscal costs of that, but long term, you get higher Google reviews and that one customer. If someone did that and came 2 weeks back and they didn't have to do and didn't charge me, like I'm going to tell a lot of people about that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the bet we're placing with our approach. And it's a pretty safe bet, actually. Roswell is a fairly close-knit community of folks that, they talk to each other. So a lot of the leads that we get are word of mouth. We get a lot of customers calling us back. And we also have another phrase, customers for life. We're looking to create customers for life, but we're also looking to have those folks talk about us to their friends and neighbors and have them call us and come take their house or their commercial structure, for example. So referrals we're a referral-based business. So
what would you say in terms of percentage of your revenue?
It's about 10% previous customers, about 10% word of mouth. A lot of the leads still are internet, direct mailings, things like that. I'll tell you, it's a lot more than it used to be, like quite a bit.
And I'm sure, that goes up to 20%, like your costs to acquire a customer is going to just drop astronomically.
Yeah, you got it. It's my cost per lead right now is about 2/3 of what it was a couple of years ago. And mainly because that ratio is shifting. And so I'm excited about that. It's one of the many different levers in a business in a business like this that you really have to pay close attention to and influence in order to make it work and be as profitable as it possibly can be.
Well, Jay, I've really appreciated how open you are, and I'm sure this is going to help a lot of prospective franchisees, even current franchisees, especially in those first, whether it's franchisee or regular business, the first 3 years are tough.
They are.
And I really appreciate you opening it up. Do you have any concluding thoughts for prospective franchisees?
I guess I would share this. It's, in my experience, if you've got confidence in yourself and an entrepreneurial spirit and you're fairly competent as it relates to implementing a process, franchising is definitely the way to go. Pick a good one with a good, like I mentioned, support network, good corporate structure behind you, and you can really flourish and have a blast like I am.
I love it, Jay. And yeah, CertaPro, the brand, it's like, well, I know CertaPro, together with some of the other first service brands like California Closets, they've been around a long time. People know them. They might be in a niche category, but they have that brand recognition. And it's a little different than a franchise that just started a year ago. And maybe there's not as much you're getting back from those royalties that you're paying and what can be a pretty high upfront franchise fee too.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm not sure about the other first service brands, but I can tell you CertaPro's been in existence for 30 years. So not a new player in the market. That was another influencing factor in the way of me deciding to buy the franchise. Was it definitely looked to me like they had their act together, and I'm glad I was right about that.
Yeah, and it's easier to sell to your family too, where it's like, hey, I'm leaving this proven bank to go with this other proven concept, but now I'm going to be the owner rather than I'm leaving this bank and I could have got another job at a bank easily that was high paying, and I'm going to do this, random startup that unproven market, unproven product, and it could do really well, or it could waste the next 3 years.
Right. But it does appear like a much safer bet than a lot of other things that might have been along the entrepreneurial track.
Well, Jay, thanks so much. I really appreciate all that you've shared today with us.
You're right, Patrick. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
Thanks.